The Grandview Hotel's rooftop terrace glittered like a jewelry box under the night sky. All champagne flutes and designer suits that cost more than Jennifer Kraft made in a year. She tugged at the borrowed black dress that hung slightly too loose on her frame, feeling every inch the imposter she was. The bride, her college roommate who'd climbed the corporate ladder while Jennifer served coffee to people who never looked her in the eye, had insisted she come. But now, wedged between marble columns and old money, Jennifer felt like a moth who'd flown too close to a chandelier. Across the terrace, Larry Deddy felt a different kind of suffocation. His grandfather, Watson Deddy, the silver-haired titan who'd built an empire from nothing, gripped his arm with surprising strength for a man in his 80s. "That's Shirley Crump," Watson growled, nodding toward a striking woman in crimson silk, her calculating smile fixed on Larry like a heat-seeking missile. "Her father owns half the commercial real estate in the city. You need a wife, boy. Someone who understands our world. Someone appropriate." Larry's stomach turned. Since his engagement had imploded in spectacular fashion 6 months ago, tabloid headlines and all, his grandfather's campaign to marry him off had become relentless. He felt less like a CEO and more like a commodity being traded at market value. His eyes swept the crowd, hunting for any exit, and that's when he saw her. A woman by the ice sculpture, looking as out of place and desperate as he felt. She had the kind of natural beauty that didn't need a designer label, warm eyes that were currently blazing with barely contained rage. He watched as a drunken guest in a Rolex stumbled toward her, his voice carrying across the terrace. "Sweetheart, did someone forget to tell you this wasn't a staff event?" The man's laugh was cruel, entitled. "If you're here to work, I'll take another glass of that Moët." The humiliation hit Jennifer like a physical blow. Her face burned. Every eye within earshot turned to watch her shame. She was already pivoting toward the exit, ready to run. And then everything changed. Larry moved without thinking, a survival instinct dressed up as chivalry. He abandoned his grandfather mid-lecture and cut through the crowd with the kind of authority that came from years in boardrooms. People stepped aside automatically. He didn't stop until he was right beside her, close enough to smell her shampoo, something simple and honest in a room full of expensive perfume. He leaned down, his voice low and urgent, meant only for her. "I need you to pretend to be my fiancé. Right now." Jennifer's head snapped up. She recognized him instantly, Larry Deddy, the billionaire CEO whose face graced business magazines, whose grandfather's name was on half the buildings downtown. "What?" she whispered, her mind spinning. "Just for tonight," he said quickly, his gray eyes intense, almost desperate. "I'll pay you. Whatever you need. But I'm begging you, play along." Before she could process what was happening, he took her hand. His grip was warm, solid, anchoring. He turned to face his approaching grandfather and the predatory Shirley Crump, pulling Jennifer firmly against his side. "Grandfather," Larry announced, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent terrace, "I'd like you to meet Jennifer. My fiancée. We've been keeping it private, but since everyone's here." The collective gasp was audible. The drunk guest who'd insulted her looked like he'd swallowed his tongue. Shirley Crump's smile froze into something dangerous. Watson Deddy's eyes went wide, then narrowed with sharp assessment. Larry lifted Jennifer's hand to his lips, his eyes never leaving hers, and kissed her knuckles with deliberate tenderness. "Darling," he murmured, loud enough for their audience, "shall we dance? If you're listening right now, help me prove something wrong. My mother said I wouldn't even reach 1,000 subscribers, but I believe stories like this deserve to be heard. Help me show her that these stories matter." The penthouse occupied the top 3 floors of the Deddy Tower, a monument to wealth so staggering that Jennifer felt dizzy just stepping out of the private elevator. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city like a painting, lights stretching to the horizon. Everything was glass and steel and cold perfection, much like the man who'd brought her here. Larry loosened his bow tie and poured himself a scotch from a crystal decanter. He didn't offer her one. "Sit," he said, gesturing to a leather sofa that probably cost more than her car. Jennifer remained standing. "I think I'd like to go home now. Thank you for whatever that was back there, but $25,000 a month." The words hit her like a bucket of ice water. She stared at him. Larry took a slow sip of his drink, studying her over the rim of the glass. That's what I'm offering, plus living expenses, a clothing allowance, and anything else you need. In exchange for 6 months of your time. 6 months of what, exactly? Marriage. He said it as casually as someone might say coffee. A contract marriage. You pretend to be my wife. Attend events, family dinners, convince my grandfather I've settled down with someone. Unsuitable enough to be real, but respectable enough not to embarrass the family name. Jennifer's laugh was sharp, disbelieving. You're insane. I'm desperate. For the first time, something human flickered across his face. My grandfather is dying. He won't tell me how long he has, but I see it. He's obsessed with legacy, with seeing me married before he goes. If I don't give him this, he'll orchestrate something worse. Someone like Shirley Crump, whose father would own me through the marriage. So you'd rather own me? I'd rather we own each other, temporarily. Larry set down his glass. You need money, don't insult my intelligence by denying it. I saw your shoes. Good quality ones, resold at least twice. Your dress is borrowed. You're working multiple jobs and still drowning. I'm offering you a lifeline. Jennifer's throat tightened. He'd read her entire financial situation in a glance, like she was transparent. And after 6 months? Quiet divorce. Generous settlement. You walk away with enough to change your life. I get my grandfather off my back and keep my company independent. He pulled a folder from his briefcase and set it on the coffee table between them. Standard contract. You're welcome to have a lawyer review it. I can't afford a lawyer. I'll provide one. This only works if you understand exactly what you're agreeing to. Jennifer stared at the folder like it might bite her. This was crazy. Insane. The plot of a bad romance novel. But when she thought about the stack of medical bills on her kitchen counter, her mother's medication she could barely afford, the eviction notice she'd shoved in a drawer. Why me? She asked quietly. You could have any woman. Because you're real. The words came out harder than he seemed to intend. Everyone in my world is a performance. But you, standing there being insulted, about to run rather than make a scene, that was genuine. My grandfather will believe you because you're not trying to be believed. I don't know how to be a billionaire's wife. That's what tomorrow is for. Larry pulled out his phone, already moving on as if her agreement was foregone. Be here at 9 a.m. We have work to do. The woman who arrived the next morning looked nothing like Larry Deddy. Where he was all sharp edges and expensive tailoring, she was soft warmth in a practical blazer. But her eyes were just as assessing. Isabel Chen, she introduced herself, shaking Jennifer's hand with a grip that meant business. I'll be teaching you everything you need to know about surviving in Larry's world. We have 5 days before the engagement announcement dinner. 5 days? Jennifer's voice pitched higher than intended. Walk for me, Isabel commanded, ignoring the panic. Across the room and back. For 3 hours, Jennifer walked, sat, stood, held a wine glass, held a champagne flute, practiced her handshake, firm but not aggressive, her smile, warm but not eager, her laugh, genuine but controlled. By lunch, her feet ached and her head spun with rules. You're doing well, Isabel said, which felt like high praise given her earlier critiques. But remember, posture is power. These people can smell insecurity. Larry appeared in the doorway, suit jacket discarded, sleeves rolled to his elbows. It was the most casual Jennifer had seen him, and somehow more intimidating for it. How's she doing? She's a quick study. Isabel gathered her materials. Tomorrow we'll cover conversation topics. Jennifer, memorize this reading list tonight. You'll need to discuss at least 3 of these books intelligently. After Isabel left, Jennifer slumped onto the sofa, exhausted. Do you always talk about people like they're not in the room? Yes. Larry didn't apologize. He sat across from her, that analytical gaze sweeping over her like she was a problem to solve. You'll get used to it. In my world, directness is efficiency. In my world, it's called being rude. Something that might have been amusement flickered across his face. Your world isn't going to exist for the next 6 months. The sooner you accept that, the easier this will be. Jennifer met his eyes, seeing the steel beneath the surface. This man wasn't cold, he was controlled. Every emotion locked down, every reaction calculated. It was like watching someone operate a machine they'd learned to pilot but never quite inhabit. What happened to you? The question slipped out before she could stop it. Larry's expression shuddered completely. "Read your books, Jennifer. I'll see you tomorrow at 9. He left her sitting in his perfect, empty penthouse, surrounded by luxury that felt more like a museum than a home. Watson Deddy's estate made Larry's penthouse look modest. The sprawling mansion sat on 5 acres of manicured grounds, all old money and older traditions. Jennifer's palms sweated as Larry's car crunched up the gravel drive. "Relax," Larry said, though his own jaw was tight. "He's just a man who built a billion-dollar empire from nothing. He'll respect that you're intimidated. He won't respect it if you're fake." Larry glanced at her, and for just a moment, his expression softened. "Just be yourself. That's why this works." A butler, an actual butler, led them through halls lined with oil paintings of stern-faced ancestors. Watson Deddy waited in a library that smelled of leather and cigars, a king in his castle. He was smaller than Jennifer expected, age having stolen some of his height, but his eyes were sharp as cut glass. They swept over her with the efficiency of an X-ray machine. "So," he said, his voice like gravel, "you're the girl who captured my grandson's attention." "Grandfather." Larry's hand found the small of Jennifer's back, a gesture she'd learned meant solidarity. "This is Jennifer Kraft." "Kraft." Watson turned the name over like he was testing its weight. "Can't say I know any Krafts." "What does your father do, girl?" "He passed away when I was 12, sir. He was a mechanic." The room went quiet. Watson's eyebrows rose fractionally. "A mechanic? And your mother?" "She's a nurse. Retired now due to health issues." "I see." Watson settled back in his leather chair, steepling his fingers. "And how did you meet my grandson? I imagine your circles don't often intersect." Jennifer felt Larry tense beside her, ready to intervene, but she found her voice first. "At a coffee shop, actually. I spilled an entire tray of drinks on him. Ruined a very expensive suit, from what I understand. It was a lie they'd rehearsed, but Jennifer delivered it with enough embarrassed humor that it felt real." She watched Watson's face for a reaction. The old man's lips twitched. "And that impressed you, did it, Larry? A woman who can't carry a tray." "I was impressed by her apology," Larry said smoothly, playing his part. "She didn't grovel or make excuses. She looked me in the eye, said she was sorry, and offered to pay for the dry cleaning even though we both knew she couldn't afford it." It was refreshing. Watson studied them both with those sharp, calculating eyes. Jennifer had the distinct feeling she was being priced and appraised like a stock investment. "You'll come to dinner Thursday," he said finally. It wasn't a question. "The whole family. I want to see how you handle the pack." As they drove away, Jennifer exhaled for what felt like the first time in an hour. "Did I pass?" "He's suspicious," Larry said. "But that's good. If you'd been perfect, he'd never believe it." He glanced at her, and something in his expression eased slightly. "You did well." It was the closest thing to a compliment she'd received from him. Jennifer found herself absurdly pleased. Shirley Crump appeared at the engagement announcement dinner like a viper in Valentino. Jennifer had spent all day being dressed, styled, and polished by Isabel's team, transformed into someone she barely recognized in the mirror. But Shirley saw right through it. "Jennifer," she purred, air-kissing both cheeks with the warmth of a reptile. "What a surprise this all is. Larry's been so private about his personal life. I prefer to keep what's precious close," Larry said, his arm sliding around Jennifer's waist with practiced ease. "How modern." Shirley's smile could cut glass. "You know, I don't believe we've been properly introduced. What was your family name again?" "Kraft." "Kraft." Shirley repeated it the same way Watson had, but with more poison. "I'm terrible with names. Remind me, was your mother a Vanderbilt Kraft or a Boston Kraft?" Jennifer's stomach dropped. "Neither. She's from Ohio." "Oh." The single syllable dripped with dismissal. Then Shirley reached out, taking Jennifer's hand as if to admire her engagement ring, a brilliant cut diamond that probably cost more than a car. But Shirley's thumb pressed against Jennifer's palm, feeling the calluses there. Hard proof of years spent carrying trays, scrubbing tables, working with her hands. Shirley's eyes sharpened. "What interesting hands you have. Do you play sports?" "Rock climbing," Jennifer lied, the first thing that came to mind. "How adventurous." Shirley released her hand, but Jennifer felt marked, exposed. You must tell me more about your family sometime. I find backgrounds so revealing. After Shirley glided away, Larry leaned close. She knows something's off. Those hands were the tell, Jennifer whispered back. She felt the calluses. Then we'll say you volunteer at a community kitchen. Cooking for the homeless. Make it look like charity work. Jennifer stared at him. You're terrifyingly good at lying. I'm good at strategy. Larry's expression was unreadable. There's a difference. But Jennifer wondered if he even knew what the truth looked like anymore, buried under all those careful layers of control. The call came at 2 in the morning. Jennifer had been living in Larry's penthouse for 3 weeks now, sleeping in the guest suite that was bigger than her old apartment. She'd almost gotten used to the bizarre new normal of her life, the constant performances, the suffocating rules, the cold efficiency of the man she was supposed to be madly in love with. Her phone buzzed. Larry's name on the screen. Hello? I need you. His voice was rough, wrong somehow. I'm in my room. Can't. The door's unlocked. Jennifer was moving before she'd fully processed the words, pulling on a robe and running down the hall. She found Larry's bedroom door ajar, soft light spilling out. He was on the floor beside his bed, shaking. Fever-bright eyes, skin flushed and slick with sweat. An empty pill bottle lay nearby. Oh my God. Jennifer dropped to her knees beside him. Larry, what? Migraine medication, he managed through gritted teeth. Took it too late. Should've. Earlier, but we had that dinner, and I thought I could push through. She'd never seen him anything less than perfectly composed. Now he was vulnerable, human, hurting. Okay. Jennifer forced herself to think clearly. What do you need? Water. Dark. Quiet. Each word seemed to cost him. Usually passes in a few hours if I can just. Jennifer helped him into bed, killed the lights, brought water and a cold cloth for his forehead. She should have left then. Their contract didn't include nursing duty, but something kept her there. She sat on the edge of the bed in the darkness, and without thinking, her hand found his. He gripped it like a lifeline. You don't have to stay, he whispered. I know. But she did stay. Through the long hours as he drifted in and out of feverish sleep, occasionally mumbling things that sounded like names she didn't recognize, pieces of a past he never discussed. Once, he said, I'm sorry, with such broken sincerity that Jennifer's throat tightened. Near dawn, his breathing finally evened out. His hand was still wrapped around hers. My ex-fiancée left during one of these, he said suddenly, his voice clearer. Said she couldn't handle a husband with medical issues. Said it wasn't the image she'd signed up for. Jennifer's heart cracked a little. I'm not her. No. Larry's thumb brushed across her knuckles, across those telling calluses Shirley had noticed. You're real. In the gray morning light filtering through the curtains, something shifted between them. Something neither had planned for, something the contract hadn't accounted for. Jennifer told herself it was just proximity, just kindness, just the natural result of two people playing pretend for too long. She told herself it didn't mean anything. But when Larry finally fell into real sleep, his hand still holding hers, she knew they were both in trouble. The problem with maintaining two lives was that eventually, they collided. Jennifer had been careful, so careful, about keeping her old world separate from her new one. But 3 months into the arrangement, her mother's medication costs spiked unexpectedly. The money Larry paid her was substantial, but it was held in escrow per the contract, untouchable until certain milestones were met. She needed cash now, so she picked up a shift at Rose's Diner, the place she'd worked before Larry Deddy had turned her life into an expensive charade. Just one night, she told herself. In and out, nobody would know. She was wiping down table 7 when the bell above the door chimed. Jennifer looked up and felt her blood turn to ice. Marcus Whitmore, old money, older gossip, a fixture at every society event she'd attended on Larry's arm, stood in the doorway with his wife, both of them looking wildly out of place among the vinyl booths and laminate countertops. Jennifer? Marcus's eyebrows shot toward his hairline. Jennifer Deddy? Her mind raced. The name still felt foreign, wrong. Marcus, hello. What a surprise. We were driving back from the theater and Patricia wanted coffee. He was staring at her uniform, the grease-stained apron, the order pad in her hand. Are you working here? Volunteering, Jennifer said, the lie forming even as panic clawed at her throat. It's a charity initiative I'm passionate about. Supporting local businesses, you know. Getting my hands dirty, understanding how the other half lives. She forced a laugh that sounded manic even to her own ears. Larry thinks I'm crazy, but I believe in giving back. Patricia Whitmore's expression was pure skepticism. How wonderfully progressive of you. Let me get you that coffee, Jennifer said, already backing toward the kitchen. On the house. She made it to the storage room before her hands started shaking. Through the small window, she watched Marcus and Patricia whisper intensely, Patricia's phone already out. By tomorrow morning, half of Larry's social circle would be buzzing with speculation. Jennifer pulled out her phone and texted Larry. We have a problem. The charity gala was the event of the season. The kind of glittering affair where million-dollar donations were made with the casual flourish of someone tipping a bartender. Jennifer had been dreading it for weeks, and after the diner incident, her anxiety had metastasized into something close to terror. Larry had handled the Marcus situation with his usual cold efficiency. A carefully placed story about Jennifer's immersive philanthropy project had made the rounds. A sizable donation to Rose's diner for infrastructure improvements had sealed Rose's silence. Crisis managed, scandal averted. But the cracks were showing. You're tense, Larry murmured as they entered the ballroom, his hand settling at the small of her back. The gesture had become automatic over the months, muscle memory masquerading as affection. I'm terrified, Jennifer admitted. Shirley's been watching me like a hawk. She knows something's wrong, Larry. She's just waiting for proof. Then we don't give her any. But his jaw was tight, and Jennifer had learned to read the subtle tells beneath his controlled exterior. He was worried too. The evening proceeded with agonizing slowness. Jennifer made small talk with people whose jewelry cost more than her childhood home. She laughed at jokes she didn't find funny. She played the role she'd been paid to play, and with each passing hour, the weight of the performance grew heavier. Dance with me, Larry said suddenly, appearing at her elbow as a waltz began. It wasn't a request. His hand was already guiding her toward the floor, away from the cluster of women who'd been interrogating her about wedding plans. The real wedding that would never happen. In his arms, she felt the familiar contradiction, the safety of his presence warring with the danger of what was building between them. 4 months ago, dancing with Larry Deddy had been purely transactional. Now it felt like standing at the edge of a cliff. You handled the Marcus situation well, he said, his voice low enough that only she could hear. I lied. Same as always. You survived. That's what matters. Jennifer looked up at him, at the sharp lines of his face, the gray eyes that had slowly learned to soften when they looked at her. Is that really all that matters to you? Survival? Something flickered across his expression, pain, maybe, or longing. His hand tightened on her waist, pulling her incrementally closer. They were treading into dangerous territory, and they both knew it. Jennifer. Her name on his lips sounded different than it had 4 months ago. Less like a business arrangement, more like a confession. The music swelled. The room blurred at the edges. There was only Larry's heartbeat beneath her palm, the warmth of his breath, the way he was looking at her like she was the only real thing in a room full of beautiful illusions. He leaned down, and Jennifer forgot to breathe. The kiss started as performance. They'd kissed before at events, careful pecks designed for public consumption. But this was different. This was Larry's hand sliding into her hair, her fingers gripping his lapel, 4 months of pretending combusting into something incendiary and true. When they finally broke apart, they were both shaking. That wasn't. Larry started, then stopped. For once in his life, the brilliant strategist had no words. No, Jennifer agreed, her voice unsteady. That wasn't part of the contract. They finished the dance in silence, but everything had changed. The careful walls they'd maintained had crumbled, and neither of them knew how to build them back up. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday. Jennifer found it slipped under the penthouse door, her name written in elegant script across the front. No return address. She knew before opening it that nothing good came in unmarked envelopes. Inside were photocopies of medical bills. Her mother's bills. The ones she'd been desperately trying to pay off. The reason she'd agreed to this insane arrangement in the first place. Some were stamped past due in angry red letters. Others showed collection notices. And underneath them all, a single note in that same elegant handwriting. "We should talk, Shirley." Jennifer's hands went numb. The restaurant Shirley had chosen was the kind of place where lunch cost $300 and everyone spoke in hushed, cultured tones. Shirley sat by the window in cream-colored Chanel, looking like a predator in couture. "Jennifer," she smiled. "So glad you could make it. What do you want?" Jennifer didn't bother sitting. Direct. "I appreciate that." Shirley gestured to the chair across from her. "Sit. We're civilized women, aren't we?" Jennifer sat because making a scene would only make things worse. Shirley pulled out another folder, this one thicker. "I've been doing some research. It's amazing what you can find if you know where to look. Medical debt, eviction notices, 3 jobs worked simultaneously." She trailed off, letting the implications hang. "You're not Larry's great love story. You're a transaction. That's not." "Please." Shirley's laugh was sharp. "I know a business arrangement when I see one. The question is, does Watson know? Does the board? Does the Society page reporter who's been so enchanted by your fairy tale romance?" Jennifer's throat constricted. "What do you want?" "I want you gone." Shirley leaned forward, and her beautiful face twisted into something ugly. "Larry should have been mine. We were being positioned for this merger for years before his ridiculous first engagement. I've invested too much time, too much strategy, to be usurped by a waitress playing dress-up. Larry doesn't love you." "Love?" Shirley laughed. "This isn't about love, you naive child. This is about power, legacy, appropriate alliances. Things someone from your background couldn't possibly understand." She pushed the folder across the table. "Leave him. Quietly. Break the engagement, cite irreconcilable differences, disappear back to whatever hole you crawled out of. Do this, and these documents stay private. And if I don't?" Shirley's smile was poisonous. "Then everyone will know the truth. Larry will be humiliated, his grandfather will be devastated, and you'll be exposed as the gold-digging fraud you are. Your mother's medical situation will become public fodder. Tell me, Jennifer, how do you think her nursing home will react when reporters start circling?" The threat was clear. Jennifer had no leverage, no power, no way to fight someone like Shirley Crump. "I need time to think. You have until the spring gala on Saturday." Shirley stood, smoothing her skirt. "Make the right choice." The spring gala was Watson Deddy's crowning achievement each year. A charity event that raised millions and gathered every important name in the city under one glittering roof. Jennifer had been dreading it for weeks, but now it felt like walking toward an execution. She'd spent 3 days agonizing over Shirley's ultimatum. She couldn't tell Larry. He'd try to fight it, and Shirley would burn everything down out of spite. The only way to protect him, to protect his relationship with his dying grandfather, was to leave. But the thought of walking away from Larry made her chest physically ache. "You're quiet tonight," Larry observed as they entered the ballroom. He looked devastatingly handsome in his tuxedo, and Jennifer had to force herself not to memorize every detail. This would be their last event together. "Just tired," she lied. Watson Deddy held court near the stage, looking frailer than the last time Jennifer had seen him but still commanding the room with sheer force of will. When he saw them, his weathered face softened into something almost affectionate. "There's my grandson and his bride," he said, the warmth in his voice making Jennifer want to cry. Over the months, Watson had slowly accepted her, even grown fond of her in his gruff way. She'd been breaking his heart without even knowing it. "Grandfather," Larry said, something careful in his tone. "You look well. I'm dying, boy. Let's not prettify it." Watson turned to Jennifer. "But I'm dying happy, knowing you've found someone real. Someone who sees you, not just the empire." The guilt was a physical weight. The evening progressed with agonizing slowness. Jennifer smiled, made small talk, played her part for the last time. She'd written a letter to Larry explaining everything, well, almost everything. She couldn't quite bring herself to admit that the kiss at the charity gala had meant something, that somewhere along the way, pretending had stopped feeling like pretending. She was near the dessert table when she felt it, the shift in the room's energy. Conversations stuttering to a halt, heads turning toward the stage. Shirley stood at the microphone, resplendent in scarlet, her smile victorious. "If I could have everyone's attention," she began, her voice carrying across the ballroom. "I have an announcement that I think you'll all find illuminating." Larry appeared at Jennifer's side, his face gone pale. What is she doing? I'm afraid there's been a terrible deception, Shirley continued, clearly relishing every word. Our beloved Larry Deddy's engagement. This fairy tale romance we've all been celebrating is nothing but an elaborate fraud. The room erupted in gasps and whispers. Jennifer felt the walls closing in. Jennifer Kraft, or should I say, Jennifer the waitress, was paid to pose as Larry's fiancée. A business transaction designed to appease his grandfather and secure his position in the company. I have documentation proving her massive debts, her desperate circumstances, the contract. That's enough. Larry's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. He stepped forward, his posture radiating authority, and when he spoke again, his voice was cold steel. You're right about one thing, Shirley. There was a contract. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded document, the original agreement Jennifer had signed 4 months ago. This contract, the one that detailed a 6-month arrangement in exchange for financial compensation. Jennifer's world tilted. He was confirming it, admitting everything in front of everyone. But what you don't understand, Larry continued, his eyes scanning the shocked crowd before landing on his grandfather, is that contracts can be renegotiated. Terms can change. He turned to Jennifer, and the look on his face stole her breath. I'm in love with her. The ballroom went silent. I didn't plan it, Larry said, his voice softer now. I hired Jennifer to play a part, yes. But she became something else entirely. She became the only person in my life who saw me as human instead of an asset. Who called me out when I was being a cold bastard? Who sat with me in the dark when I was at my worst and didn't run? He crossed to her, taking her hands in his. Jennifer was vaguely aware of cameras flashing, of Watson Deddy's stunned expression, of Shirley's face contorted with rage. So yes, it started as a transaction, Larry said. But somewhere along the way, it became the most real thing in my life. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box, not the ostentatious ring she'd been wearing for show, but something simpler, more elegant. Jennifer Kraft, will you marry me? Not because of a contract or money or any other reason except that I love you and I want to spend my life proving that you're worth more than any empire? Tears were streaming down Jennifer's face. You're insane. You've said that before. Your answer's still pending. Yes, she whispered. Then louder. Yes, you impossible man. When he kissed her, the ballroom erupted, some in applause, some in scandalized whispers, but Jennifer didn't care. She was kissing Larry Deddy, and this time it wasn't for show. Watson Deddy's laughter cut through the noise. Well, I'll be damned, the old man said, his eyes bright. Leave it to my grandson to do things the complicated way. He stepped forward, leaning heavily on his cane. You hired her, did you? Smart. At least you vetted the investment. Grandfather. Oh hush, boy, I'm not blind. Been suspicious from the start. No Kraft family in any registry, calluses on her hands. The way she ate at that first dinner like she'd never seen that much food. Watson turned to Jennifer, and his expression softened. But you know what convinced me you were worth keeping? Jennifer shook her head, unable to speak. You made him human again, Watson said simply. After that first disaster of an engagement, he turned himself into a machine. All business, no heart. But you got him laughing again. Fighting again. Living again. He patted her cheek with a gnarled hand. Don't care how it started, girl. Care how it ends. Shirley had disappeared into the crowd, her victory turned to ash. The scandal would be tomorrow's headlines. But standing there surrounded by chaos with Larry's arm around her and Watson's approval warming her better than champagne, Jennifer found she didn't care. The contract burned beautifully. They did it on the penthouse balcony at sunrise, a week after the gala. The media storm had been exactly as catastrophic as predicted, tabloid headlines screaming about fraud and deception, think pieces about the morality of transactional relationships, society matrons clutching their pearls. But Larry's grandfather had stood firm. At his insistence, the board had backed off. And slowly, grudgingly, society had decided that the scandal was actually rather romantic in a twisted way. A modern fairy tale, some called it. Others were less kind. Jennifer didn't care about them anymore. Larry held the contract over the flames of a small fire pit, the pages curling and blackening. 6 months, he said. That's all I thought I needed. Turns out you needed more. Turns out I needed you. He let the last of the contract fall into the flames. No more performance. No more pretending. Just us. Just us, Jennifer echoed. And your terrifying grandfather. And a media circus. And probably Shirley plotting revenge somewhere. Larry laughed. A real, unguarded sound that still surprised her every time. I warned you I came with complications. I'm a waitress who married a billionaire CEO. I think I can handle complicated. He pulled her close, and in the growing light of dawn, Jennifer saw the man she'd agreed to pretend to love, the man she'd accidentally fallen for anyway, the man who'd burned his carefully constructed walls down for her. Mrs. Deddy, he murmured against her hair. That's going to take some getting used to. You have the rest of our lives to practice. The contract was ash now, scattered by the morning wind. No more terms, no more conditions, no more expiration date. Just two people who'd found something real in the most improbable of circumstances. Jennifer leaned into Larry's warmth and watched the sun rise over the city. Their city now, spread out below them full of possibility and promise. It had started with a desperate proposal and a 6-month deadline. It was ending with forever. And somewhere in Watson Deddy's mansion across town, an old man smiled into his morning coffee, satisfied that his grandson had finally learned the difference between acquiring an asset and choosing a partner. The empire would endure. The family would continue. But more importantly, Larry had learned to be human again. And really, that was the best return on investment Watson could have asked for. I pour everything into finding stories that actually matter. If this resonated with you, smash that subscribe button and turn on post notification. These stories deserve an audience that appreciates them, and that's you.